Hi, grandparents. We are in December and it's going to be Christmas time soon. Unbelievably, it's that time of year already. But we talked last week about the Christmas Carol and the Ghost of Christmas Past. And this week we want to talk about the Ghost of Christmas Present and pull out a couple of lessons from the story and apply them to our grandparenting lives. So I want to start by reading you just a couple of quick passages from the story. First of all, if you recall, in this portion of the story, Scrooge is going to go visit some families enjoying their present Christmas gatherings. So he visits the family of Bob Cratchit and then of his nephew and sees the different experiences that those families are having. But at the beginning of this chapter, the Ghost of Christmas Present makes a kind of an interesting statement. He says, "You have never seen the like of me before," exclaimed the spirit. And even though that's just kind of a quick little pass through as you're reading the story, it comments on Scrooge's life. You know, he hasn't experienced Christmas present. He hasn't been a participant in the festivities for years. And so he hasn't seen this spirit in the function of celebrating a holiday. Well, then going down a little bit further, the Ghost of Christmas Present was getting ready to take Scrooge on his journey. And Scrooge says this, "Spirit," said Scrooge submissively, "conduct me where you will. I went forth last night on compulsion, and I learnt a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it." So I wanted to comment a little bit on that. You know, one of the things that made this story so great and gave it the happy ending that it had was that Scrooge, as crotchety and difficult as he was at the beginning of the movie or the book, he had a teachable spirit. He was willing to learn, and he even stated this. So it's really great writing, of course, which it is a classic anyway. But just think about this. It tells us a lot about Scrooge's character. And from that, we can learn a lesson for ourselves. You know, are we teachable? Are we willing? You know, if we were to have the Christmas Carol experience, how would we receive it? And would we learn the lessons that were there to be learned? Scrooge was willing, and he even said, "If you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it. Let me learn. Let me grow in the experience." So then he goes on to visit the doings and the happenings of a couple of families. But I want to share another little passage because the ultimate lesson from this chapter has its root in this portion of the story. "But soon the steeples called good people all to church and chapel, and away they came, flocking through the streets in their best clothes and with their gayest faces. And at the same time there emerged from scores of by-streets, lanes, and nameless turnings, innumerable people carrying their dinners to the bakers' shops. The sight of these poor revelers appeared to interest the spirit very much. For he stood with Scrooge beside him in a baker's doorway, and taking off the covers as their bearers passed, sprinkled incense on their dinners from his torch. And it was a very uncommon kind of torch, for once or twice, when there were angry words between some dinner carriers who had jostled each other, he shed a few drops of water on them from it, and their good humor was restored directly. For they said it was a shame to quarrel upon Christmas Day, and so it was, God love it, so it was. In time the bells ceased, and the bakers were shut up, and yet there was a genial shadowing forth of all those dinners and the progress of their cooking in the thawed blotch of wet above each baker's oven, where the pavement smoked as if the stones were cooking too. "Is there a peculiar flavor in what you sprinkle from your torch?" asked Scrooge. "There is, my own." "Would it apply to any kind of dinner on this day?" asked Scrooge. "To any kindly given, to a poor one most." "Why to a poor one most?" asked Scrooge. "Because it needs it most." And the intriguing thought in this passage is that peculiar flavor that was sprinkled by the spirit of Christmas present. And if you think through the story, what was really being given there was just that joy that can be sprinkled in the moment of Christmas present. And the lesson ultimately of the chapter is that people were happy and content with what they had, be it great or small. But part of that comes through the spirit of Christmas present, the joy that we receive and put into the events ourselves, and for people of faith, from the spirit behind the holiday, of course. What is the celebration about? Why are we celebrating? There's joy to be gleaned from that, regardless of our physical or wealth circumstances. So think through that and just wonder if there's a peculiar flavor being sprinkled upon your holiday dinners and gatherings that comes from the spirit of the holiday and the spirit of Christmas present. Now, one other thing I wanted to comment on today, and we're going to use this going forward a little bit in the month of January, but in just thinking about Christmas present and getting ready for this, I've been thinking about it for a while, and the thing that has come to mind with me is this has been an incredibly busy year for our family and for me. And so I've found myself to be just chugging through activities and not being fully present in the moment. And I've felt some conviction about that. And especially as we go into holidays, this is one of my favorite times of year. I love family gatherings. I love getting together and seeing everyone. And is it exhausting? Yes. Does it take a lot of effort? Yes. But there's just so much joy in being together with family. And I am working hard to get things done so I can be fully present in Christmas present this year. And I hope you will do the same. So take care. We'll be back next week. Be grand.